What's good, Joe? It's your man Bigga P, and I'm here to talk about the two PBC cards from last night. Um, Overall, they were entertaining cards for the matter, um, with the exception of one particular fight, which I will go into briefly later on. So the first card I want to talk about is the PBC on Fox card. It was a doubleheader. Well, really, it was a triple header since there was three fights that aired. um, the Mars and Santa Cruz doubleheader, which will, which is supposed to lead into a rematch between the two probably next year, if we're being honest. Definitely not this year. Um, but first, to start it off, it was a fight I wasn't even expecting. It was DeMarco, um, I think, slowly going back down to 140, facing Ramirez, who was an undefeated prospect, who I think defeated Eric Bone and among others. Um, he and like I said, I wasn't expecting the but I was thinking, okay, Demarco, this could be one of those fights where Demarco is the name, and he's just gonna go over there. He's gonna give the young undefeated fighter some work and some, and eventually, take another loss to him. That didn't go. It didn't go as planned. I was highly impressed, though. I think it ended in the first round too, where Demarco, stunned him, wobbled him, and then after that gave him a stoppage reminiscent of the one that he gave Linares when he originally won the belt with the lightweight belt some years back. And I know there are people are saying, oh, they disagree with the stoppage. But I thought it was I thought it was justified, because to me Ramirez, was a young fighter. He was, I mean, because he had got wobbled before, and he wasn't really putting up much of a fight. I mean, he was against the ropes. He was covering up. He wasn't really throwing back. He was getting hit, and then afterwards he really got hit, and then he went to the ropes hard, and then Demarco started his little flurry and forced a stoppage. Um, so that was that. I mean, I was like, I was highly impressed, because like I said, I didn't expect that to happen. But good for Demarco, though, and good to see that I mean, originally I thought he was gonna retire, and then he came back, and he had a couple of not so great fights for him, and then but it seems like he's back, and hopefully can probably make another run, especially at 140, where now belts are becoming unfastened, so to speak, from the waist of Terrence Crawford. So, and he's definitely more the game to fight any of the champions or the newer champions after Crawford. So we'll see how that goes. Second fight was Mares versus Gutierrez. Um, now my issue Now, before I go, my issue with the Mares and the LSC fights, is I think they're just not justified. I mean, if you're gonna put a fight like this on, put it on Bounce or something like that. Don't put this on primetime Fox, and as something that we need to see, or anything like that, because I mean, although Gutierrez on paper would definitely seem to be, he would probably prevent some sort of challenge to Mars. In the end, it really wasn't the case. Mars looked good. Mars, uses movements. He was using fast combinations, and even more so, he was more defensively responsible. Um, Moving his head a lot, ducking under these punches and stuff like that, and something that he's never really had done before, or done much of, as he went up in weight. Um, Gutierrez, I'll say though, he has a hell of a chin on him, and he was game. And but other than that, he didn't really bring. I mean, he spammed the left hook, a couple times during the fight, and that's pretty much about it. He never. I mean, he never. I mean, I thought maybe the pressure would break Mars, but Mars, it was just target practice. It was just, you know, Gutierrez falling wrong, and then afterwards, I mean, it appears to me that he got cut by a punch, And then there was when he was and Gutierrez had blood coming out of his ears, and then after like 7 to 8 rounds, I'm like, why send him out? I mean, he hasn't done anything to say, hey, he's got to turn around and win this fight. He hasn't stunned Mares, he hasn't knocked him down. He hasn't. I don't think he even went around, from what I could tell, at least clearer to me, So it's just like, they need to pull him out of the fight. And it was just a slow beating. Gutierrez was just too tough to go down. He was just walking forward, and it got kind of uncomfortable to watch. And Mares, although landing, did have the type of power to put him down, which may come back to bite him in the ass later. Who knows? But finally, the fight stopped, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, good. Finally, Mares got a TKO. Well, imagine my surprise when they were like, no, no, it was a foul. So it was like, so that, and where it was pretty much all that Mares, pretty much technically knocked him out. But, instead Mares got the technical decision and the clear victory, and retains his version of the WBA featherweight title. The main event was Leo Santa Cruz versus Chris Avalos. That fight in itself, I thought was a huge mismatch on paper, because Avalos, he got there, and then I've seen, I think his three of his last 5 fights were losses. They were KO losses at that, and then also another thing. I think his last fight before, I think is the reason why he got the shot. I think his last fight, he was on his way to losing, but he managed to open up a cut that on the opponent that actually managed to, and got TKO that way. So Avalos as a fighter was not. I was not really impressed by this, and I thought it was even more. This was a big mismatch, a huge mismatch. Um, so and that's how it played out. LSC pretty much. Although Avalos had his moments, LSC pretty much whipped him like it was nobody's business. That fourth round in itself was just was just unbelievable. I just could not believe that fight. Fight was not stopped in that round itself. But it continued on, and I think it ended in 7. I think the referees took he was taking too much, and stopped it. Like I said, I mean, there's nothing. I can't say it was impressive because it wasn't an impressive opponent. Avalos was pretty much ready to go, and every was getting a beating. It looked like he was ready to go in many of the rounds. Surprisingly, he didn't even go down, which was another thing I was surprised about. But in LSC, like Mares, LSC's power at 126. Like I said, it's not if he's a volume puncher and expect, but I don't think he has that type of power at 126 either. But he's a volume puncher, so he makes it so he's a motherfucker to fight. So I mean, he won, and like I said, Mares. I mean, at least Mares showed some improvement in his fighting. LSC was pretty much the same. He only knows how to fight one way, and that's toward you throwing a whole shitload of punches. And I've talked about LSC before. I thought that I still think that at some point his progress, his skill level stagnated at some point. I just don't see. I mean, well, hey, boxing is we have one trick ponies that are successful, and I guess he's one of them. I just don't see. It's just. I guess it depends on if LC actually faces someone reputable again. Like, let's for instance, um, those two and Gary Russell are all in the same camp. They all hold belts. Gary Russell is the WBC featherweight champion. Why hasn't PBC hasn't even come close to say, oh yeah, let's go make a fight with these two. Let's make a fight with them. Like, why? Why won't you make a fight? I mean, they can have their own featherweight tournament within there. Because Gary right now is not really doing anything. and I'm a big fan of his. But this fighting once a year type of stuff is wearing thin. He should be fighting. He should be at least fighting. If he's a champion, he should fight at least 2 times a year. 3 would be nice, but at least 2 times a year. But I just don't understand why fights like that. I mean, and I've already had my issues with LSC and Mares. Well, not really Mares per se, but LSC not taking certain fights he should have took. Um, and that's one of those ones that I'm thinking, like, okay, this is a fight that they should have to. I mean, I've already made it very known that Rigo and LSC should have been fought, but that's like at 122 or whatever. I'm not, like I said, that's in the best. But I'm thinking, like I said, now if PBC wants to make some fights, look at they control 3 featherweight champions, as far as I know. Is it 3? Yeah, it was 3 featherweight champions because Selby's in England, and Valdez is with Top Rank. So I guess it was, and it was a wonderful, it was a nice little display, to get people to say, oh yeah, those two, yeah, we'll look forward to a rematch. But my feeling is, once this rematch got out of the way, then the BBC needs to start really looking at, needs not to start looking at, making a tournament of some sort with its featherweights. But remains to be seen. And then afterwards, we have the Showtime triple header, the one at 154. Now, I was really anticipating this. It was a overall, it was a nice card. First fight was Trout-Hurd versus Austin Trout. Now, I was thinking that Trout would actually win this based off experience and everything, because Hurd, I think Hurd doesn't have that many fights in his in his career, and I'm thinking to myself, he pretty much stumbled into this title, and it's like, the Harrison fight was one fight that told me, okay, maybe this guy needs to needs to send his title for a little bit, soft touch, because Austin Trout is a veteran, guy who's been, he's been in the best, and has actually beaten some of the best too at that, and I thought, experience-wise, Trout would be too much for him, and then that's what it looked like for the first 6 rounds, or at least the first 6 rounds, easy. And then, unfortunately for Trout, he had not been overly active, unfortunately, for whatever reason or the other. And, the guy with the type of people that he's fought, and and the breaks in between, the ring rust. And then, he's 32 years old. I mean, granted, I don't think 32 is overly old for a fight, especially for a 154 fighter. I don't think that's necessarily old, but I think it's a different generation now. These 154 fighters that he's been facing are bigger, per se, than the ones he was facing before. They're not his size. They're more, and that was the one thing. And as much as I enjoyed Trout boxing the hell out of Hurd was in this fight, and he looked absolutely massive, man. I know I'm definitely not the only one to actually say this and watch this, but Hurd looked easily like he was a light heavyweight in that ring tonight. Because Trout, he was landing some combinations on him and everything like that. But Hurd never took a step back. Hurd moved forward. Tried to cut off the ring, and his legs were all tangled and stuff like that. His footwork was not really the best, but he was moving forward. And then Trout being, I think Trout got tired. I mean, I think to me that's just more like the ring rust that was setting in on him, and he started getting sloppy. And then with Trout, when he starts getting sloppy, I mean, I don't know. He reached. I mean, he takes one punch. He's like, it's an over exaggeration of the punch. Sometimes you just don't know if he's actually fooling around or he really is hurt. The final round of the fight was brutal to watch because he was spent. It wasn't like he was taking a lot of punishment. It's because literally Hurd was too big for him, and started walking him down and started landing the right hand. I mean, that the last fight was kind of brutal to watch, and I was thinking, okay, maybe they need to pull this guy out of the fight, and I was hoping that wasn't the case. But you see Trout in his corner, his eye is swollen and everything like that, and I know he wanted to go on, but he wasn't giving them. I mean, I thought he earned enough to say, hey, let's try and see what we could do after these next couple rounds, but that was not meant to be. I mean, Trout is a guy like I said, at times I've never liked watching him fight. Although at late he's gotten more offensive, but I respected him. And he's a guy that I thought has always got a lot of tough breaks in this sport. Um, some tough close breaks. And even in his other losses, he was more than competitive. Well, except for the Lara fight, he wasn't really competitive in that. I mean, Lara boxed his head off in that one. But even his last fight um, against Charlo, I mean, and Charlo himself was knocking people out, and he actually, I mean, he held his ground with Charlo with no problem. And Charlo is just is a big guy too at 154. I mean, that's why he's at 160 now. But I just hated seeing Trout. But at least Charlo, Hurd is not where he's. I mean, Hurd right now is still a raw talent, a very incredibly raw talent who happens to have a title belt. And basically, he won the fight because he was too damn big. He was able to absorb all the shots and he just walked him down. And this was the fight, and this was a fight, and this was the type of fight that kind of I was just like, ugh. You know, if Hurd at least was more with the, if Hurd was like a little bit more skillful with how he actually beat Trout, I'd be like, okay, Hurd is the deal. I mean, this is just something that's just how the cookie crumbles. But yeah, I think I felt the same way when I watched Steve Cunningham get knocked out by Tyson Fury. Because as you know, I mean, Steve Cunningham gave Fury all types of trouble, knocked him down and everything. And and that was the type of feeling I got. I was just like feeling it wasn't skill. It was just a lot of. It was just size and power was just too much. Um, and I know it was brutal on both ends. So I know both of them went to the hospital. Trout had his. I know Trout went to the hospital. I thought they would have put her to the hospital because that's what they said. But they interviewed him in the crowd. They interviewed him in the crowd and everything like that with the dark shades on, with his lady who was fine by the way in that dress. I could not help but actually take a look take a look, a couple times, and so yeah, I mean that was an excellent fight. The next fight I think was the fight everyone was anticipating. It would Erickson Lubin versus the other Charlo. um, this one I thought was I thought it was 50-50 on paper. Um, and when I say 50-50 on paper, it was mostly because Charlo had some moments in the fight. I mean, Charlo is not like his bro. This Charlo is not known as a power puncher, although he scored a nice KO over Hatley. And then there's always the thing that Charlo was getting outboxed by Jackson when he won the title, which he was down on the cards from what I remember, and it's just like people were giving him a respect. And then you have Lubin, who pretty much has been active, has been very busy, and then won his eliminator with no type of problems against Coda. So let's set the stage for this fight. Nothing more to say about this fight other than, god damn, that was a KO of the year. It came out of nowhere too. This is one thing. Charlo pretty much took notice of Lubin putting his duck in his head a little bit too low, hands down. And the funny thing is, the punch was I didn't because I thought he was just a trip or whatever. Until it was just crazy to see an uppercut landed so low. It rocked the guy, and then you saw him on the ground. He was seizing, it was like yeah, he, brain got short circuited. Neurons, they lost their mode of transmission and everything. Like he was gone. Uh, he was super gone. um, Even though, and then people are talking about, oh no, the show let him continue. Nah, no. When you see someone's no, it's one thing if they weren't seizing. I mean, Lubin got hit hard with an uppercut. When you see a man seizing on the ground like that, it's very rare that you should actually let him get up. I mean, granted, it was near the end of the round. You're like, oh, let's see what he can do. Maybe he'll I mean, he may have came back, or it might have saved or the inevitable might have happened. But to me, I thought the referee was fair. I thought this was the right decision to stop the fight. He gave him up to. It wasn't like he came out to 6, and the nigga was still seizing. And it was just like, you gotta stop it. You can't let someone fight like that. I mean, as much as you wanted that, wanted to be like a fight of the year, which on paper it was. I mean, in hindsight, it was one sided as anything. Lubin was just not ready for that. He didn't have. I mean, Kota is a good opponent, but I guess he probably could have fought someone more with a name on there, someone a little bit more tougher on his way to the belt, like Charlo did. I mean, Charlo fought plenty of gatekeepers there before he won his title, and I think that probably would have suited him better. That probably would have been a lot better for him. But like I said, I mean, it wasn't like it was a sudden fight. It was, people get caught. Badu Jack got caught with one punch in one round by a journeyman, and look where he is now. So Lubin can come back. Charlo, on the other hand, him and his brother, like I said, now I mean, Charlo can easily. I mean, they could easily run 154 right now. I think what PBC needs to do now is really now focus on trying to get their 154 fighters to unify the belts over there. I know Charlo called out Hurd, who's now pretty much, I think, is a target for everybody right now, and and hey, I would love to see it. I would absolutely love to see that fight. Just to see, just I mean, I can't imagine Hurd walking Charlo down like that without taking a bad beating from a guy who's probably his size. But, will remain to be seen. The main event, which for whatever reason is the main event, Arizona Lara versus Trout-Hurd. I mean, one thing about Lara is like Berto to me in some way, because you just figure out, like, I mean, how does he get the ratings that he get? I mean, because it's not like, I mean, Lara to the average fan is not the most pleasing person to watch fight. Um, he's skilled, yes, but depending on who the opponent is, he's not the fight will not be exciting. I mean, exciting to watch. I mean, he's had exciting fights. I mean, pretty much the best fight in his career that I've seen is probably the one against Angulo, and that one was not only dangerously close, but it was also dangerously close to Lara probably getting KO'd. Um, and then if you don't, you have the fights like uh, Rodriguez, which was a chore to watch. Fights like that. Um, and Lara too has also been known as a very hot and cold fighter himself. Depending on who he's facing. I mean, hell, you can go back to the fight we had with Punisher. In that fight, he not only did he came forward, he landed counters at will in a fight that I thought he probably should have won. So yes, but regardless, Lara, I don't think the buzz between him facing Gausha was not main event worthy. Gausha himself was a guy that if you probably watched me, he was either on the pre PBC undercards or on bounce. He's a decent fighter, but he hasn't really done anything per se to me to even get to warrant a title shot. So I'm not gonna go into any details on this fight because I'm not gonna lie to you. That fight put me to sleep. Well, not for the full. I mean, I think I fell asleep somewhere in the ninth round, and I woke up when my phone went off sometime in the 12th round. Took a little nap. Um, it was not an exciting fight. It was a chore to watch. I mean, Laura was Laura, but I was like, the show could have at least tried to make it interesting. I mean, the only exciting moment of the fight was pretty much, I think it was in the fourth round where Laura managed to drop him. But yeah, after that it was just a chore to watch, man. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I mean, the crowd was like, this was boring chants. You can even tell like some of them were leaving. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was. I mean, and you don't want to see that for a main event. I mean, at least if you put a fight like that in the beginning, at least people knows that there's a payoff after that. And then this one, he's like, there is no payoff. Um, so Laura got the victory, and the cards were pretty. I think from that card, I mean, if you wanted to give Gashaw like one round, that would have been fine. But I mean, there were judges that actually gave that man 4 rounds, and I'm like, 4 rounds of what? And I didn't believe that, but then of course it's not fine. I'm gonna rewatch anytime soon to say, okay, no, this is the round that he should have won or whatever, or Gashaw should have won this, win this round or not win this round. I'm not gonna rewatch this fight, but I know in my heart Gashaw did not win no 4 rounds, but it is what it is. Gashaw, I mean, we'll just go back and probably go back to the drawing board and try to rebuild himself. And Laura, for hopefully we'll get to the mix. We'll get to the mix with, if not Hurd or Charlo. Well, no, from what I understand, Laura and Charlo are, they're buddies and whatnot. So hopefully, Laura will actually face someone a little better per se, someone who can actually make an exciting fight with him. Uh, yeah, and then I mean, you probably don't want to put him in main events anymore either, especially on a major card going forward. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those two cards. I mean, like I said, overall, it was a good night of boxing. Um, can't say, I mean, can't say overly bad about it. I was hoping for like a one, I mean, fight of the year. Or well, I mean, maybe, depending on who you're talking to, maybe Hurd, Trout might be a fight of the year, but I thought it was a good fight, but I think it fell short of that. So so yeah, it was a good night, and until next time, peace.